So since my last couple of videos, I kind of talked a little bit about my philosophy about space-time, space, curved space, all that bullshit. Yeah, I thought it was kind of fitting to maybe touch on how I think about Euclidean geometry and the fifth postulate, the famous fifth postulate, right? Um, yeah. So first off, the way that I look at Euclid's elements is it's mostly just an exercise in how to draw shapes on properly planed flat surface. How to precisely accomplish this with minimal demonstration of how to do mathematics with this. It is kind of in there, but it's mostly seems to be kind of exercises, sometimes redundant exercises, seemingly sort of randomly redundant. If you actually go through them, like, there's some weird spots, like, wait, didn't we just do this, like, 3 things ago? And yeah, if you actually go through it, it's kind of underwhelming once you kind of get past the part that, like, it's actually amazing that any of this shit works. It's kind of underwhelming how poorly thought out the entire thing is. So for it to be so famous in the way that it's famous is kind of weird. You know, it's sort of like how Shakespeare is famous, right? It's like the the trashy TV show of Elizabethan England ends up being like super duper famous forever. Okay, but you do know that it wasn't high literature. It was trashy TV. It was designed to appeal to everybody, and that's why it did, and that's actually why it survived. Euclid's Elements, in my opinion, it's a similar sort of thing. Like it does convey it's a little bit better than trashy TV in some regards, but it's also trashy TV in a lot of regards. It's most of it is quite appealingly simple. Um, but also just there's this strange, especially now, there's this veil of like this exotic, ancient language that it was written in. Oh, we speak English. We couldn't possibly ever learn Greek. Like that phrase, it's Greek to me. Like, are you fucking kidding me? You can't read, you can't understand Greek at all? As an English speaker, you should be able to overhear, like, Greek and understand something like 15% of it. Just automatically by virtue of not being retarded. I don't understand. I don't understand. Anyway, yeah. So I kind of look at it as it's just sort of a collection of exercises that you might use for maybe teaching somebody how to build stuff, how to say you need to cut a perfect equilateral triangle. Like maybe you're making like a stone facade for something, and you just need this shape for some reason. Well, if your stone is well planed, then you can just draw it right on there with like chalk or whatever the fuck, and just use some basic tools that you can make out of trash. That's what this is. Like, in that regard, it's brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic. But it's kind of taken, like the Fifth Postulate took on this insane character where it turned into far more than I think it ever was for Euclid or anybody else at, at the time. Right, so like I'm actually looking at them right now. So it starts off, the book one, Elements, the book one, starts off with definitions. The English translation of oroi, which just means like words, names, like crap that I'm telling you. It's actually cognate with the word but okay. Yeah, so it's like, a point is that which there is no part. So I'm clearly reading, nobody wants to hear my Greek, I'm clearly reading the English, right? And this is not my translation. I don't actually fully agree that this is the best translation, but it's a free PDF, so I'm not going to complain. Like, somebody went to all of the effort to make this and put it up for free. Not in a position to bitch about that. That's awesome. Here, actually, let me give credit to these guys. Who are they? I'll actually even put a link to this, because, that's awesome. Where the hell? Richard Fitzpatrick. Edited and provided with a modern English translation by Richard Fitzpatrick. Thank you, Richard. You're a fucking baller. Anyway. Scroll back down to where I was. Yeah, so, like, it's just like, yeah, so a point, there's, like, you don't do jack shit. You just... So, defining it this way, a point is that of which there is no part. I mean, what that means, as far as, like, working on a well-planed piece of stone or some shit with your tools, with your compass and straight edge, presumably, it doesn't actually ever tell you that that's all you can use. To be fair, it doesn't say that. That's a... Those suffice to do all of these things, but in my reading of the text, it never actually says that you're only allowed to use that. Like, it doesn't... Okay, anyway. I might be missing something, because I haven't read the full text in a while. It might actually say that somewhere, but I don't think it does. I don't think it actually says that. It doesn't... In many regards, it doesn't actually explain very well how the hell to do anything. If you actually read it. Anyway, yeah. So, it's just kind of like, assumes that you have the ability to make a circle. And it's like, here, make a circle. Like, it doesn't say, use your compass to make a circle. It never says that. So there's clearly some context, some cultural context missing from this document. So that is always with texts, particularly old ass texts like this. That is always a room for danger right there. Like that invites crazy ass interpretations, and that's how you get like the Hasidim and the Taliban. And I'm not comparing those two directly necessarily. I'm just saying, like, Hasidic Jews they're crazy in a certain way, and the Taliban are crazy in definitely a different way, definitely a worse way. It's probably not the best example. I don't hate Jews. It's fine. Anyway, I think you can see where I'm going if you don't get into the like, oh my god, anti-Semitism. Yeah, if you don't get into that bullshit, I think you can see where I'm going with that. Like, if you look at the history of the Hasidic movement, it's pretty clearly heretical. There's just like looking at the text and like, oh my god, it says this and this and this and this, and they just get drawn into like these weird, crazy things that they're sort of making up. And Jehovah's Witness, same thing. Seventh-day Adventist. Basically exactly the same as the Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, you're coming from the same actual... yeah, all that. Yeah, the unspoken aspects. That's where it gets really dangerous, and you should be skeptical of claims about what those aspects were, especially when we're talking about something that was written thousands upon thousands of years ago in a completely alien culture to your own. Which this document, Euclid's Elements, was. It was written in a completely foreign language to the one that you speak. Even if you speak Greek today, it's written in a different language than what you speak. So, yeah. But yeah, you take something like, a point is that of which there is no part. What that means to me, especially when I look at the Greek, which isn't actually much clearer. It's fewer words. It's quite a bit fewer words. It means to me that if you were to, you just touch the tablet that you're working on, whatever the surface that you're working on, you just touch it. You made a point. That's what that is. That's just point. That's a point. You didn't do anything. And then the next one is, a line is a length without breadth. So that's, you've touched, and then you've pulled. Touch, pull. So, dot, stroke. Point, line. That's all we're doing. That's all he's saying right here. And then he points out that the extremities of the line are points themselves. Okay, so now we're getting like weirdly philosophical about this. And this is kind of, I think, where you start inviting the math crazies. We're like, oh, this is like a foundational text for mathematics. This is what made our world possible. Okay. Chill. Kind of, I guess, but chill. And then it carries on. And it just kind of, for the most part, each one kind of grows from the next. So, like, you take a point, you grow it into a line, you take a line, and you grow it into, What does it grow into from there? Oh, it actually specifies right after this that a straight line, I accidentally did the, so yeah, I'll do it on purpose. Straight line is one which lies evenly with points on itself. That's a terrible fucking definition. Anyway, and a surface is that which has length and breadth only. So clearly, I think at this point, what he's talking about with surface is not really what we would think of today. Because you're already operating on a surface. You've prepared a surface to work on. And all of this, everything in here, is talking about how you can work on such a surface. So, I think it's unfair to say that, like, that surface and, like, the mathematical surface that are the same sort of thing, or that he's even talking about a mathematical surface. I'm not convinced that that's actually what he's talking about. I mean, I think he's more talking about, like, figures. And in a very general, like, your work area as a figure, right? And the next one, the very next one, is the extremities of a surface are lines. Which should be problematic, I think. I don't know. Because if you just have like a ragged piece of rock and you plane it, is the contour of that actually constituted of lines? I don't know. So I don't think that's what he's talking about. I think what he's talking about is your prepared workspace. Your prepared workspace, you're going to clean it up. It's not going to just be some random ass rock that you plane and you get some weird random cross section. Your workspace is going to be a specified sort of figure, probably rectangular, within which you're going to work. And then he goes on, yada, 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 yada. And then, let's see. A boundary is that which is the extremity of something. So we already talked about the extremities of the surface being lines. Now it's like 7 down from that. A boundary is that which is the extremity of something. And then the next one, a figure is that which is contained by some boundary or boundaries. So he's kind of gone from the sense of like a work surface to actual like doodles on the work surface. Like, I think that's the direction this is going. I could be entirely wrong about that. I don't fucking know. Dude's dead. We can't ask him. But you also don't know, because the dude's dead. You can't ask him. So, your disagreeal with me is speculative. Anyway, so yeah, it just kind of carries on like that. Okay, so the last one of these definitions, the last one of these oroi, this one is interesting. 23, the 23rd one. How was that? Yeah. So the fifth postulate, what the fifth postulate is supposedly about, when I was told when I was a kid in school, is that the fifth postulate is about parallel lines, and that you can't actually prove that, like, the reason this is interesting is you can't prove that it's true. Okay, but we have definitions here. Number 23. Parallel lines. So he's defining for us what parallel lines are. Parallel lines are straight lines, which, being in the same plane, and being produced to infinity in each direction, meet with one another in neither. Or, like, if you want to say this in some language other than jackass, parallel lines don't ever intersect. They don't cross. Ever. And this is by virtue of them existing on a properly planed surface. A flat, planed surface. If you plane your surface correctly, and you make parallel lines, they will never touch each other. And if you did it perfectly, forever, they would never touch. That's what this is. It's one, I feel like it's really just an ideal of craftsmanship, is really what this is about, where this is coming from. I have no idea if this is what Euclid himself was thinking when he wrote this, but he probably didn't even author this in the first place. He's probably copying this from somebody else, paraphrasing it in some way. But like, this isn't his idea. This is, the Bronze Age collapse happened before him. Right? All of this, lots of math, lots of knowledge from the Middle East Mesopotamia, all that bullshit. Yeah, that came over and kind of just got partially redistributed by the Greeks, but in Greek. And then, because we're idiots, we give them credit for it as being like, oh, you made it up in the first place, yay! No, you idiot! They copied it from somebody else. Like, yeah, they came up with some shit, but it was expansions on stuff, and for the most part, most of the crap that they came up with, that they actually, like, innovated on their own, was already known anyway. Like, in a previous civilization, it was, like, lost information. But whatever. Okay, anyway, so, we have a definition of what parallel lines are, how they operate in a plane, in two-dimensional space. We have a definition that says that they never intersect. Okay, so now I have a problem with later math coming in and being like, okay, well, we can't prove the fifth postulate, so what we'll do is we'll have a little fit and we'll say, well, what we should do is we should look at all possible spaces, including spaces that curve. Curve, girl, curve. Yeah, space can't curve. That's not a thing that can happen. If you have curves in your whatever, then that's an object that lies within a space. That's not a space. So you're an idiot. Also, definition 23, Euclid defines what parallel lines are. So when you come back and you try to redefine parallel lines within a curved space in order to come back and say, oh, look, the fifth postulate, you know, the reason that we couldn't prove that, it's because it's not always true. In non-Euclidean geometry, it doesn't work. Okay, there is no such thing as non-Euclidean geometry. Everything that you're doing, everything that you're doing in non-Euclidean geometry, you're actually just applying transforms to Euclidean geometry so that you can describe things moving across the surface of an object within a Euclidean space. There is no non-Euclidean geometry. There isn't. There just isn't. You can pretend, and you can convince yourself that there is, and you can very usefully pretend that there is. That's true. That's true. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the granddaddy space that is harboring everything is flat. It's Euclidean. It's always Euclidean. And everything that you're doing is simply taking Euclidean shit and applying transforms to it to get curves. That's all you're doing. And yes, it's useful. Yes, it gave us a lot of really nice innovations. Yeah, that's true. But the underlying philosophy is bullshit, which is part of the reason it took something like, what, 2,000 years for somebody to come up with it? Because it's actually underlyingly bullshit. So, like, one of the things that can happen is in non-Euclidean geometries, parallel lines can intersect. But per definition 23 of Elements Book 1, parallel lines can't intersect. It's an axiom. It's a definition. You don't have to prove this. This isn't a thing you have to prove. It's an axiom. You take it on, I don't know, call it faith. I don't give a fuck. But it's defined for you. This isn't a thing that you go out and prove. Why are we trying to mathematically prove an axiom? You're an idiot. Why? Why are you trying to prove the postulates? They're not for that. Right? Postulate 1. Postulate 1. I'm going to show you that this isn't a thing that is even, it was ever meant to be provable. Let it have been postulated to draw a straight line from any point to any point. What? How do you prove that? So I take a point, I take another point, and if I draw between them, I've drawn a line. That's still actually just a definition. And to produce a finite straight line continuously in a straight line. These aren't claims. That's the second postulate. These aren't things that you would try to prove. What the hell kind of crack are you smoking, mathematics? Why were you on, like, we need to prove that these are real? These don't even make sense. To draw a circle with any center and radius. That's 3. And all right angles are equal to one another. Well, you defined it that way, didn't you? It's such a specific angle that you gave it a special name. So yeah, all of those that match that special name are going to be the same as each other. If you feel like you have to prove this mathematically, you're a moron. What the hell kind of retarded shit are you on? And then 5. Oh my god. This one is amazing. This one is amazing. It's amazing in both this English rendition and in the Greek. But nobody needs to hear my Greek, so. Thank you, Richard Fitzgerald. Number 5. The fifth postulate. The thing that we were worried about for so long. Trying to prove it. And nobody could. How do you prove that you draw a straight line from a point to a point? How do you prove that? Like, what? What do you come up with as your foundation where that's not true? That's what I'm curious about. Like, how do you build a system of math where that's not true? Because if you're ever worried that you have to prove it, you're expecting math to be like, nah, bitch, that's not always true. Otherwise, why are you worried about proving it? Anyway, number 5. And that if a straight line falling across 2 straight lines makes internal angles on the same side less than 2 right angles, then the 2 straight lines being produced to infinity meet on that side that the sum of the internal angles is less than 2 right angles and do not meet on the other side. What? Alright, so the gist, like, okay. Basically what this means is that a square is squared up. That is one actual, like, valid interpretation of what this says. But I don't think anybody ever took it that way. They're like, oh, they're worried about, oh, it's talking about straight parallel lines. We're worried about parallel lines. Yeah, I mean, kind of. But you're actually just talking about using, like, a square is a good standard for measuring right angles. That's actually what this says. And you could take that square and you can use any of its corners. You can use any of its angles as your standard. If you have a perfect square, if you've managed to draw a perfect square, you can use that object in any rotation, in any orientation. You can use that object for your standard of what a right angle is. And you can use two opposite sides as your standard for what parallel lines should look like. Right? So, using the corner, you get a right angle, any of the corners, doesn't matter. And using opposite sides, you can get a standard for parallel lines. That's what this really is. That's what this really is telling you. And I don't think it's so much I think this might be true, as these are grander consequences of the things that I already said that are useful. If you want to draw a straight line from one specific point to another, you can. That's postulate 1. And if you want to take that line and you want to make it longer, you can do that. That's postulate 2. And if you want to take some line and you want to make a circle that's centered at one of its ends and just touches the other end, you can also do that. That's postulate 3. And, oh, hey, by the way, all of the right angles, every single right angle, because we named them, we get to define what they are, they're all exactly the same. That's why we named them that way, because that's really the only way that naming things makes sense. Yeah, they're all the same. And then number 5 is, using that, what we can do is, we could do stuff like drop in a line and put a circle on it and drop in some more lines. And we could see, when we bring our square in over here and set it up on it, we can tell, are these actually parallel or not? That's all this is. It's not a postulate in the modern scientific sense. It's not a postulate in the modern mathematical sense. I don't think that's what that is at all. It's just it's a little bit bigger conclusion from what has been said before. And what was said before was definitions. Right? So these are just sort of mundane conclusions from definitions that were just given. And yeah, I guess that's a thing that you could prove or disprove, but I don't think that looking at it in that sense, in the way that math looked at it, and we got really, really excited, came in its pants when it figured out, curved spaces. Oh my god, non-Euclidean spaces. The 5th postulate, we don't need to prove it anymore. Chill. You're misunderstanding what this all was anyway. Chill the fuck out. Also, you're misunderstanding what a space is, because spaces can't be curved. But whatever. Yeah, and then it carries on, and it's common notions. And then it's got propositions. Right? These are the English words. Common notions is actually pretty accurate in the Greek. Things equal to the same thing are also equal to one another. So again, it's basically just defining shit. And if equal things are added to equal things, then the wholes are equal. I barely even understand what the hell he means by that. So, yeah. Okay. So if we take 4 feet and 1 foot and put them together, and over here we take 4 feet and 1 foot and put them together, they're both the same 5 feet. That distance is the same. It's not the 4 feet over here is different. because we're not, you know, we're not using special relativity or anything. And if equal things are added, yeah, I already did that one. And if equal things are subtracted from equal things, then the remainders are equal. Yeah, so this is the same thing. And things coinciding with one another are equal to one another. Oh my God. And the whole is greater than the part. Oh my God. Oh my God. So you mean if I take a person and I chop off their head, then they're no longer a whole person? Whoa, that's mine. We should worry about proving this. Math, you have a new job. Prove common notion 5. Forget about postulate 5. Prove common notion 5. That's your job.